Hey guys, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vanosky, your host. It's going to be a shorter one today, and it's going to be just me, and I'm going to be talking about my new book that is coming out in just a few short months. I love it. I hope you'll love it. Stay tuned for what it's all about and why you should be interested in it right here on Manufacturing Talks. I'll be back in just a few seconds.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vanosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. Yeah, like I said, I'm solo today. I'm going to be talking about my new book that's coming out in just a few months. And still working on the title. Right now, my working title is Inspiring American Makers. It's about 22 American manufacturers that a lot of them been around for a long time, and all of them have fascinating stories that I share. And the whole purpose of it is not just to share stories of cool manufacturing, which I love doing and have been doing for years now, but to number one, counter this notion that is far too pervasive in America today that we just don't make anything anymore. And, I think that comes from a lot of different uh, directions. One is that there are plenty of people who've seen whole swaths of industry be hollowed out. The folks in the Rust Belt, whether it's steel makers or forging operations, or even car plants that have gone by the wayside and devastated whole communities and areas of the Midwest. They certainly could have the notion that we have seen that across the country and in all industries, but that's not really true. Similarly down in the Southeast with textiles and garment making, you've got a tiny fraction of what used to be there left, and whole job categories that essentially no longer exist in America. But the thing is, for those losses, they were devastating, certainly to those communities, but they were a small part of American manufacturing as a whole. We remain the number two manufacturer in the world behind China. I think we should be number one, and that's another reason I've written the book, is to throw that down as a challenge, that our new moonshot ought to be becoming again the industrial powerhouse of the world, and there's no reason we can't be there. I've talked about shipbuilding extensively here in the last few months on this show, and I submit that if we were only to fix what we need to fix from a national security perspective in shipbuilding, in textiles and garments, and in steel making, we would be on top of the world in manufacturing once again. So it's certainly not anything that's not doable. But I think a lot of people who have been dissuaded from working in manufacturing or working in skilled trade jobs, which is another sad fact that we've had for now 3 generations, educators and even parents thinking that these jobs are dead ends, are not going to exist in the future. And that's another one that I think couldn't be further from the truth. And we're finally starting to see a resurgence in trades, thanks to folks like Mike Rowe and his foundation, helping to support trades education and careers. And we need a lot more of that. And so the whole point of the book is to take these 22 companies that I write about and use them as examples of, there's still a dynamic American productive manufacturing sector out there, people making very good livings, treating employees very well, helping their communities, and doing all kinds of good work in ways that are positive for the country, positive for those communities, positive for those employees. And we just need a whole lot more of it, I think. The sad fact of where the world is headed technologically, as we've talked so much about automation destroying those kinds of jobs, manufacturing jobs, and they've certainly helped that decline in the number of jobs available. But that's also because they've taken away the dark, dirty, dangerous jobs that people kind of looked to when they were denigrating those jobs as career opportunities. Those things are going by the wayside, and we've got automation that handles all those dangerous and dreary tasks for us, and it's really elevated manufacturing employment to a whole other level. So manufacturing jobs of today are not what your grandpa had, and folks need to be thinking about that. Educators need to be educating themselves about that reality. But here's another reality: as we talk so much about AI is not coming for your manufacturing jobs. It's certainly going to have an impact on manufacturing. In fact, it's going to have an effect on everything across the board. But where it's really going to hit hard is in white collar jobs where folks today are sitting in front of computers all day. And I think that's something we're not talking nearly enough about. Is we hear a lot about coding jobs because that's one of the earliest segments of industry or of business that's been hit. But it's going to go far beyond that. So if you're sitting in front of a computer all day today, your job probably isn't going to be there in a decade. And what are you going to do? Are you sending your kids to colleges to learn those kinds of jobs today? If you are, that standard path that existed for so many decades is being blown up in front of our very eyes as we speak. So in the end, my book is about the future. It is about getting back to things that we used to value highly, that making of things that undergirded a strong nation, whether it was from a national security perspective or just from a perspective of what we did for work, how satisfying it was, what people who like to work with their hands were able to do to provide for their families and build their communities. Unfortunately, in a lot of places in the country, those things went away. And we've seen it in the male workforce participation rate that I've talked about numerous times on this show, that went from around 90% in 1950 down to below 70% today. Be awful nice to start pulling some of those guys who wandered away from the workforce back, because we're offering now those hands-on jobs that they really wanted all along. Okay, so I've said enough for now. I'm going to be revisiting this topic routinely on this show. If this is of interest to you, and I think it ought to be of interest to everybody, but I'm a little biased here on Manufacturing Talks, but I'm going to have a link in the show description to my newsletter. So I've had a newsletter for a while. I had it putting out my content. I'm going to swing that entirely to updates about the book. And as I develop, where you can pre-order, where you can order it, where you can get a signed copy, where I'm going to be talking about it or doing book signings, that's all going to be on that newsletter. So get your info in there at the link I provide, and I will get you all the details on this as we move along. In the meantime, pay attention to this show. In addition to the spectacular content I always have, again, I will be revisiting how my book is coming over the next several months leading up to its release, and even thereafter on how it's going once it's out there and folks are buying it and reading it, and I'm hoping, loving it like I think they ought to. I think that's it for now. Jim Vinosky with Manufacturing Talks, signing off. So long.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.